very young age, of the age of, being 10, 11, 12, or 15, you already have somewhat of an idea of what you want to be when you grow up, what career path you want to be. You get more mature and your thought process gets more aligned as you are in high school and going into college. If you want to be a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, a businessman, whatever it may be in IT, we all plan a roadmap to success for that career path. Once you achieve that, you start thinking about your next goal and the goal afterwards and the goal afterwards. You want to get married, you want to buy a house. We're always constantly planning and having a roadmap ahead of us. But let me ask the audience the same question. Honestly speaking, how many of us sitting here today have thought about a roadmap to Jannah? Or what is my plan to enter Jannah? Or how do I plan on getting there? A lot of us Muslims, we have this conception in our minds that Jannah is just so easy. Like Allah is so merciful, Allah is Rahim, Allah is Ghafoor. We're going to stand in front of Allah Yawm al-Qiyamah and He's going to tell us to go to Jannah, khalas. People have this mindset, but who actually takes the time to think of how I plan on entering Jannah? There is many different gates and many different roads to enter Jannah. The Prophet ﷺ in one of the ahadith, he mentions, من أنفق من زوجين نودي من أبواب الجنة الثمانية, that whoever donates from his wealth twice in the same presence, that happened to Uthman ibn Affan obviously, he says he will be able to enter Jannah from any of the 8 gates. And Abu Bakr Saddig asked, is there someone that will enter Jannah from any of the gates, of the 8 gates in Jannah? And the Prophet ﷺ responds, قال نعم وأرجو أن تكون منهم. And you will be amongst them, Ya Abu Bakr. When you ask yourself, the different roadmaps, the ibadat, the acts of worship, when you stand in front of Allah Azza wa Jal Yawm al-Qiyamah, what have you done? What have you perfected? You might be a perfect physician, a surgeon, an engineer. What ibadah? What act of worship have you been so good at, where Yawm al-Qiyamah you can actually enter Jannah and stand in front of Allah and say, oh Allah, I was really good when it comes to salah. I was really good when it came to fasting, to giving, to hajj, to umrah, to birr al-walidain. There are different roads to Jannah. And when you think about those roads to Jannah, a lot of people want to choose the most general roads. Salah, fasting, siyam. The thing about these different roads to Jannah is you will find in every road, in every path, that there are people that are much better than you in that field. When you think about salah, you are competing with men and women, not just from today in 2025 or this century. You're competing from the Sahaba's time. Sahaba that some of them were known from Fajr prayer, from Duha time when the sun comes out, all the way until Al-Zawal, 30 minutes before Dhuhr, they used to pray 500 rak'at every single day as a nafil. When you think about siyam, you will find that there are people that fast more and better than you. So again, what are you unique in? Naturally, as humans, sometimes we like to have our unique path. We like to have unique, things that we have that are just for us. But when it comes to ibadah, Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu warḍah, he says, لا بد لكل امرئ, every one of us, أن تكون له خبيئة من العمل, that we should have an act of ibadah that you're so good at, that you perfect so well, that also no one knows about it but you and Allah Azza wa Jal. Where even that, when you do it and you perfect it and you go Yawm al-Qiyamah and you're standing in front of Allah Azza wa Jal and you're being asked and questioned, and the very first stage Yawm al-Qiyamah is a suhuf. Each one of us gets a book. وَفُتِحَتِ السَّمَاءُ فَكَانَتْ أَبْوَابًا, the doors of heavens open and books start to fall. And Allah Azza wa Jal, when you receive your book, Allah will say, اقرأ كتابك كفى بنفسك اليوم عليك حسيبا. Judge yourself. And Allah tells us about that judgment portion. He says, يا عبادي إنما هي أعمالكم أحصيها لكم ثم أوفيكم إياها. It all comes back to one thing: your own actions, your own deeds. وَأَن لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. You will not get anything extra than what you've done. He says, Allah Azza wa Jal, فَمَنْ وَجَدَ خَيْرًا. If you see good in that book, فَلْيَحْمِدِ اللَّهِ. Be grateful to Allah that day. وَمَنْ وَجَدَ غَيْرَ ذَلِكَ فَلَا يَلُومَنَّ إِلَّا نَفْسَهُ. One of these a'mal that are so unique that people do not necessarily always pay attention to is the a'mal of naf'i nas, being beneficial to mankind. When a man asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, O Prophet of Allah, man ahabbu an-nas ila Allah, who are the most beloved people to Allah Azza wa Jal? And the Prophet's response, قال أحب الناس إلى الله أنفعهم للناس. The most beloved people to Allah are those who are beneficial to mankind. And when it comes to offering benefit to mankind, there is a manfa'a that is called manfa'a amma, a benefit that benefits the general public. And there is a benefit that you give to one individual at a time. We've all heard the hadith of إذا مات ابن آدم, and we have a janazah after salah. انقطع عمله إلا من ثلاث. That all of his deeds end except for three. صدقة جارية وعلم ينتفع به, أو صدقة جارية وعلم ينتفع به وولد صالح يدعو له. A صدقة جارية, beneficial knowledge, and a righteous son that makes dua for you. A lot of us, when we think about this hadith, we always think about the ilm ينتفع به, the beneficial knowledge. We always associate it to the ulama, to the scholars, because we feel like we don't have knowledge to benefit the ummah with that will pass on to the next generation and the next generation and so on and so forth. The unique aspect of that is you don't have to be a scholar yourself to benefit from this concept of the hadith. You can be someone that not only helps mankind, but helps the ulama, helps the mashayikh, helps the imams. We all here, every single Muslim on the planet knows who Imam Bukhari rahimahullah is. We know Imam Bukhari, the Imam of the Hadith. If I were to ask this audience, does anyone know who Imam Bukhari's brother is? Or who he was? Or his name, or his history, or his biography? 95% of Muslims know nothing about Bukhari's brother. But what's unique about Imam Bukhari's brother? Imam Bukhari's brother was financially wealthy. And he was the one that took care of Imam Bukhari's educational trip and da'wah financially for his entire path. He told Bukhari to focus on talab al-ilm, talab al-hadith, and not worry about gathering funds. Some other ulama mentioned because he was the one that facilitated that. To Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, يوم القيامة هو والبخاري يأتون وهما في الأجر سواء. He helped and supported such a scholar to reach the goal that he reached knowledge-wise and benefited the ummah for decades and centuries to come. I want to share a very personal story, subhanAllah. 2012, after I was overseas for about 8 years, I came back to the US and I was trying to pursue my master's degree. I had my bachelor's in hadith and I want to do my master's program, and I found a Islamic university in the US online, and I called them up and I asked about their master's program and the cost for it and whatnot. And they mentioned to me that it cost $15,000. Now I had no job, I had no income. Quite frankly, culturally wise, I didn't have, the support. A lot of times back home, parents tend to think that if you're only going into the Islamic field, what career could you possibly have? Why don't you be a doctor like your brothers? I have 2 brothers who are doctors and 2 that are engineers. I'm the only one that went into the Islamic sect. I remember making istikhara and I made dua. I said, Ya Allah, if there is any khair in this, please make it happen. I really want to pursue this path. I asked the school if there is a way where we can go into a payment plan system or something, and they said you have to pay $2,000 to pay the admission fee and get your books for the first semester, and that's due in 2 weeks. Human logic, there is no way in 2 weeks logic-wise, for me to get $2,000, I don't have a job, I don't have any money. It would probably take me 2 weeks to find a job, another 2 to 3 weeks to get my first paycheck. Honestly, I lost hope from that aspect. Again, from the dunya perspective, from the human logic. I remember a week passed by, nothing happened. There's 6 days left, there's 5 days left, there's 4 days left for the deadline. And at that point, khalas, I'm starting to apply for jobs. I submitted to the fact that I'm gonna have to wait a whole new semester. Wallahi, 2 days left for the deadline to reach. I'm at the gym, so I was in Flint, Michigan at the time, playing basketball, normal day, normal life. I go to the locker room to get changed, and an Iraqi physician, Dr. Muhammad, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve and bless him for what he's done. He sees me in the locker room and says, "Are you Sheikh Yasir from the masjid?" I said, "Yes." He says, "MashaAllah, man, I've heard your khutbahs, your talks. What's next for you?" And I'm sitting there casually asking him, I said, "Listen, I know you have many practices that you have. Is there a way where I can get a job as a data entry something?" I explained to him that essentially I was supposed to pay $2,000 in 2 days for my master's program, and I'm not going to make the deadline. I mentioned nothing about the entire $15,000. I just said I was supposed to pay $2,000, and that was it. So if you can help me get a job, please let me know. And his response was, "Don't worry about the $2,000. Wallahi." He says, "Let's go to my car." We're walking to the car, and my thought process was, how Allah facilitated that 2K 2 days prior. We go to his car, and this doctor writes me a check for $20,000. Wallahi. The difference between 2,000 and 20,000 is an extra zero at the end. I really thought he made a mistake and added the zero by mistake. I said, "Dr. Muhammad, this is the wrong amount." He says, "No, take it. If you need more, let me know." I said, "Dr. Muhammad, the entire program only costs 15,000. I don't need the extra 5,000. He said, "You mentioned earlier that you were going to take an Uber home. Buy yourself a car." I finished my master's in a year and a half. I'm currently doing my PhD. Since 2013 until now, it's 12 years. I've traveled and given khutbahs and talks. Today's actually would be 26th masjid around the country. There's over 6,000 masjid in the US. The amount of people that I was able to reach and speak to and educate, subhanAllah, in those 12 years, this man is now retired at home, and I genuinely pray to Allah Azza wa Jal that Yawm al-Qiyamah, him and I come وَنَحْنُ فِي الْأَجْرِ سَوَاء. أقول ما سمعتم وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ثم أما بعد. Brothers and sisters, I know this community typically on a regular basis sees many different organizations on a regular basis. I mean, just outside there's 4 or 5 organizations on this side and a few on this side. And in the political climate that we're in right now, we're accustomed to hearing more about humanitarian relief work. Gaza, Sudan, Yemen, different countries. And naturally, as human beings and psychologically, we're more emotionally attached and inclined to want to give those projects, and we should. And it is our obligation to do so. Today, I visit on a very unique organization, NAIF, North American Imams Fellow. It is the largest imams organization in the United States. I am their director of operations on a voluntary basis. And in NAIF, their focus is on 3 things, mainly. Educating and increasing the imams' educations, empowering our imams on the minbar, on their da'wah skills, on their use of social media, and protecting our imams against anything that could potentially happen to them, especially as we are seeing the crackdown on Muslims around the United States. A couple of months ago, we've heard about an imam in Somalia, in Ohio, Imam Ayman Suleiman, who was detained by ICE. Luckily for him, he was a part of NAIF, which is kind of sort of, in a better way or shape or form, you can consider as an imams union. We have over 800 imams around the country, and we have a yearly conference, alhamdulillah, over 500 imams that come. And NAIF has on the ground or on staff attorneys that were able to facilitate and get Imam Ayman Suleiman out from Ohio with partnership with MLFA and CARE. You may have also heard about another Imam in Ohio who had his green card and was detained by ICE for 215 days and died in ICE custody. Just about 3 or 4 weeks ago. When we went to ask for the cause of death, they realized that he was not a part of NAIF. They said that he wasn't part of your organization. We cannot give you anything personal to him. Marwan Ma'ruf from Mass in Dallas, same situation. When NAIF and CARE and MLFA stood up to assist the situation, he chose to leave the country with dignity. 2 imams just about a month ago in Somalia, same thing, detained by ICE. And this is happening left and right as the current administration, as Zionist groups are trying to take down CARE, which literally is the #1 line of defense for the Muslims in this country, and trying to attack MLFA and other organizations. NAIF protects these imams. It is a unique cause. It is something that typically we're not accustomed to. But when it comes to diversifying our sadaqahs, our charities, supporting our imams who have done so much for our communities for decades, who are literally second in line after the prophets and messengers. The Prophet ﷺ says, Al-ulama hum warathatul anbiya. They are the inheritors of the anbiya. And that the anbiya do not leave behind wealth, but they leave behind their knowledge. Our imams, not only do we support them from a legal standpoint, from an educational standpoint, but also from a financial standpoint. Wallahi, there are imams in this country that have served communities and continue to serve communities. And if there is an ayah in the Quran that describes some of these imams, wallahi, it is an ayah that Allah Surah Al-Baqarah says, لِلْفُقَرَاءِ الَّذِينَ أُحْصِرُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ لَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ ضَرْبًا فِي الْأَرْضِ يحسبهم الجاهل أغنياء من التعفف تعرفهم بسيماهم لا يسألون الناس إلحافا. Wallahi, we have imams. And literally in Maryland, there was an imam that had cancer and kept going to treatment after treatment. And after a while, he could not perform his duties in the masjid. The masjid ultimately had, after a certain point, had to let him go. Wallahi, we found out that he and 5 of his kids and his wife were in a homeless shelter. When he would come out in public and pray in the masjid, you would see his smile, his face, that literally everyone around that would look at him, يَحْسَبُهُمُ الْجَاهِلُ أَغْنِيَاء مِنَ التَّعَفُّفِ, his dignity, his self-respect and preservation, لَا يَسْأَلُونَ النَّاسَ إِلْحَافًا. Brothers and sisters, our budget for a year for these 500-600 imams around the US is $350,000. I'm not coming here asking for that amount for Allah. I'm coming here asking $1,000 or $1,200 specifically sponsors an entire imam for an entire year. So this community has over 5,000 people. If we can get 50 or 60 other guys to come this side of the masjid on your way out after the salah, to sponsor an imam, to support this organization that supports our imams on a national scale. I know, wallahi, our hearts call to support Gaza, and we should. Our hearts call to support Sudan, and we should. And we should support every relief organization. And it may be NAIF today, and tomorrow Gaza, and Sudan afterwards, and afterwards Pakistan and Afghanistan, and any other country. And naturally and psychologically, as human beings, the act of giving and the act of sadaqah is one of the most difficult ibadat for us to do. We as human beings, naturally, we don't like to give. It's how Allah created us. Few people, it could be all of us, and we are still amongst the few that Allah has given us the ability to give, which ironically happens to be the only act of ibadah that every single one of us, when we are on our deathbed, and we see the angel of death descending to take our souls, Allah mentions that we all make the same request. قَالَ رَبِّي لَوْلَا أَخَّرْتَنِي إِلَىٰ أَجَلٍ قَرِيبٍ فَأَصَّدَّقُ وَأَكُنْ مِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. Oh Allah, if you can delay me a little longer so I can give one last charity, an act of sadaqah, a sadaqah jariyah. Difference between a sadaqah and a sadaqah jariyah. A sadaqah is a one-time payment and a one-time reward. A sadaqah jariyah is a one-time payment but an everlasting reward. Brothers and sisters, please stop by our table, support us with what you can. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to continue supporting all the organizations that are providing good around this ummah. أما بعد فالله زاد محمدا تعظيما وحباه فضلا من لدنه عميما نادى العباد نداء حق آمرا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد اللهم آت نفوسنا تقواها وزكيها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها اللهم اجعل عملنا كله في رضاك واغننا برحمتك عمن سواك وعمر قلوبنا بتقواك واجعلنا نخشاك حتى نراك إلى يوم نلقاك اللهم كن لإخواننا المستضعفين في غزة وفي السودان وفي سوريا وفي اليمن وفي كل مكان اللهم كن لهم ناصرا ومعينا وحافظا ومؤيدا اللهم استر عوراتهم وآمن روعاتهم واحقن دماءهم يا رب العالمين اللهم استر عوراتهم واشف جرحاهم واشف مرضاهم وداوي جرحاهم وتقبل شهداءهم وارحمهم وانصرهم على عدوهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين يا رب العالمين ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون واذكروا الله يذكركم واشكروه على نعمه يزدكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح